Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, your midlife mentor and victorious woman power partner. Thanks for joining me for the Friday Happy Hour, where us midlife women, and you men who care about us, can chat about the things that matter to you, the things that make your life better, and that help strengthen that connection to your powerful self. And, you know, it's Friday and it's happy hour, so go ahead and pour yourself a glass of wine and, well, enjoy. Joining us for Happy Hour, New York Times best-selling author Janice Kaplan is here to talk about looking on the bright side and how in the year that she did it, it transformed her life. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. I am grateful, Janice, that you're here.
Yeah, you know, the problem with writing a book called The Gratitude Diaries is that people always feel like they have to be grateful in air quotes. You know, it's nobody can actually say thank you, but it's okay. You can be grateful.
Well, that's a good thing. You know, your book, The Gratitude Diaries, How a Year of Looking on the Bright Side Transformed My Life, is a New York Times bestseller.
It is, and I'm so happy about that because, you know, this is actually my 13th book, Lucky 13, I told my publisher, and we're not supposed to have favorites as writers, but, you know, this is my favorite, and it's because I think this book has a message that's really resonating with people, and we all know on some level that if we're more grateful, if we look on the bright side, if we find the positive parts in life, we're going to be happier, and we just forget how to do it, and I think what my book has done is inspire a lot of people to say, I can do better. I can make myself happier. I can see the world in a different way.
Yeah, and I was telling the listeners earlier when I met you in New York and we at your book signing there, and I got it. I was expecting like a self-help kind of a book, but not the way you wrote it. And I love the Gratitude Diaries, and I wanted to share that and you and your work with my listeners because I thought. Because the way that you did it was so interesting, and also Thanksgiving is a couple weeks away, so this is a good time before we get into the craziness of the holiday season.
Right. Well, it is the gratitude season, and thank you for those kind words. I did try very hard in this book to make it more than just my story and to make it more than a memoir. I'm a journalist. I've always been a journalist, and so when I approached the subject, I approached it in that way, by interviewing people, by talking to doctors and neurologists and psychologists and philosophers and experts of all stripes who could give me research and understanding and insights into what was going on, because I think when we can ground the things that are happening to us, and we can understand everything from the neurology of the brain to our own natural reactions, it makes it different. It helps us to understand what's actually going on.
You know, Janice, I think a lot of times people would write that kind of stuff and they do about the neuroscience and the, you know, all that research, and then maybe put a little anecdote in. But I thought that one of the interesting things about how you wrote the Gratitude Diaries is, first of all, you walked the talk. So, you know, it was such a nice blend of your story and the research. It was engaging. I would say that.
Well, thanks. You know, and I guess I wasn't even aware that I was doing that, but many people have commented that I did do research in a very different way, that I didn't just dryly quote experts. I took readers along on the journey with me. So if I was interested in something, I would call up somebody. And, you know, I wrote about calling him up and what he said, or taking a trip out to meet a professor somewhere, or going up to Canyon Ranch and taking a walk with the medical director there and learning from him. So as I was learning, as I had the opportunity opportunity to do that and to speak to interesting people in the course of the year, I just brought my readers along with me so they had the same experience.
And you did. It wasn't dry research that you were quoting. You were just telling a story, which was great.
Right, and they were fascinating people, and it was fun. My year was incredibly fun and exciting, and again, so happy to be able to share that with people.
Well, why did you decide to focus on gratitude for a whole year? How did that get started?
Well, I had been the editor-in-chief of Parade magazine, and I had just left there, and I fortunately, through circumstances, got involved with the John Templeton Foundation, and they were kind enough to give me a grant to do a national survey on gratitude and people's attitudes toward gratitude. And so it started as sort of an intellectual exercise, but as the results started coming in, I was quite struck by them. I was struck by the fact, by so many different parts of it, but by among other things. Something like 90% of people said that they thought that gratitude would make them happier. And a similarly high percentage, when asked outright, said, yes, absolutely, grateful for family, grateful for friends. But then when asked how often they expressed gratitude, the numbers just plunged. Mm-hmm. It was under half. Under half of us actually expressed gratitude. And so it struck me that there's a big gratitude gap out there, that we know there's something that can make us happier, and we just don't do it. And so, I'm a journalist. I went on TV talking about it. I wrote several articles. And then one night, actually, it was a New Year's Eve, I was thinking about it, and it suddenly struck me that I was as guilty of it as anybody else. And I thought, how am I going to make the year ahead a really terrific one? And I realized that, it's not the events that happen. It's how we think about them. It's our own attitudes, our own perspectives. And so I gave myself the challenge to see if I could, as you said, walk the talk and go ahead and actually live a year more gratefully. And
did you have any expectations going into that year? Basically, you'd done the research, so what were you thinking?
That's a great question, because I actually thought that I thought it was going to be interesting, and I thought that maybe a few things would happen. I had no idea of the dramatic effect that would actually occur, and it happened so quickly that as I started the year, I wasn't necessarily thinking of writing a book about it, but it became so dramatic to me that things were changing, and that this one little change in attitude, change in perspective, a desire to be grateful, to reframe events that happened and see them in a positive way, was changing my marriage, changing my relationships, that I really wanted to then turn it into a full-time job, which is what I was fortunately able to do.
And how did the Gratitude Diaries, as you were writing them, how did that differ from, Oprah made the Gratitude Journal so big, years ago, and you talk to a lot of people like me who have written gratitude journals, but how is the Gratitude Diary different?
Well, what Oprah has done a lovely thing with gratitude, and she wrote something quite recently where she talked about how she's accumulated more wealth and possessions and fans than she ever had any right to expect, and over the years everything had increased for her except her happiness. And I think so many of us feel that way, not at the level of Oprah, of course, but we look at our lives and we say, yeah, things are darn good. Anybody looking from the outside would say, this is a really good thing. So my life is just fine. So why am I not feeling that? Why am I not having those moments of appreciation? And Oprah has explained that, she was just a few years ago, she was starting to feel that again when she started her network. And she was working so hard on the television network that I think she used the phrase that she was working so hard climbing the mountain that she forgot to appreciate that there was a mountain. And I think that's a lovely way to say it, that it's okay to be out there climbing the mountain. It's okay to be there and ambitious and struggling and want the next step, but we do ourselves a great disservice if we don't also stop and appreciate the moments that we have. I think one of the dangers of gratitude for some people is that they think it's going to make them less ambitious or make them soft, and it doesn't have to do that at all. Again, you can be out there climbing the mountain, but stop and appreciate the views along the way too.
And that makes me think of something else that you said And I so had that same experience. You have kept journals like most of your life, and when you went back and read them, you said that and I'll quote you, that you wrote the journals, this is your quote, when I was irritable, angry, or pissed off, and that you were stunned to read page after grumbling page of self-centered despair. It made me go back and look at my old journals, and especially from when I was younger and in the years I was doing caregiving for my mother, and I became like the only child out of four that was, like out of four kids, I became like an only child. So I wasn't, and when I read you that you said that, you also said, like, where was all the good stuff?
Right. So many of us, especially writers, tend to look at the anguish in our souls, and we take out that piece of paper only when we're unhappy. And, that's okay. We get to, for many of us, it's a great outlet to be able to pour out our thoughts and our anxieties on the page. But sometimes that then becomes the record of who we are, and we look back on it and we say, but wait, no, that's not right. That's not what I want to remember. And the Gratitude Journal does the opposite. It makes you stop each day and think of the positives that happened in the course of that day. I spoke to one woman, didn't write about her in the book, but she told me that she had kept a Gratitude Journal for 17 years and that she had never missed a single day. And I said, really, you never missed a single day? And she sort of looked surprised just as we were talking, and she said, yeah, I wonder what I wrote the day I got fired, and I wonder what I wrote the day my mom died. And she went home that night and she found those journals. She's more organized than I am. I don't think I could have found those. And she emailed me the next day and she said, I found the journal the day my mom died, and I wrote, so grateful that I have my dad and my sister here to help me through this. And I was so moved by that because it was such a great explanation of what gratitude does. It didn't change the fact that her mom died. It didn't change her sadness, but it made her stop and say, I can't do anything about that. This is the event. What's the good in it? What's the positive? How can I find some ray of sunshine to help me get to tomorrow? And she found it. And the reminder that we can do that in any situation, I think gives us an element of control back over our lives and says, we don't have to wait for an event to make us happy. We can make ourselves happy.
And that's really good because, like that is where no matter what happens to you ever, and no matter how much money you have or how little, you can be happy rich and you can be happy poor, you can be happy well and you can be happy sick. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, Janice.
Right, and there's a Benedictine monk named David Steindl Ross who I quote in the book because he's written extensively and quite beautifully about gratitude, and he has the line that it's not happiness that makes us grateful, it's gratitude that makes us happy. And again, I think it's a lovely way to look at it, and that became my mantra as I was writing the Gratitude Diaries, that it's gratitude that makes us happy, and that's what we can turn around our own lives. And by the way, just for your listeners, the Gratitude Diaries is not really my own diaries by any means. It's about the year, but it's really about my experiences, the research, the how gratitude can help with your family, how gratitude can help with your husband, how gratitude helps at work, with health, with fitness, all the different ways that our lives can be better.
Well, let's talk about those when we come back, and I want to start talking about how it transformed the relationship with your spouse.
Great.
So everybody hang tight. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. We're here with Janice Kaplan, author of The Gratitude Diaries, How a Year of Looking on the Bright Side Transformed My Life.
Actually, it's how a year looking on the right side can transform your life.
Yeah, that's right. But something that you said really surprised me. It was a piece of the research that you said that it takes 4 to 5 that for every negative thought, it takes 4 to 5 statements to counteract it. That's almost scary, isn't it?
Well, I think we all sort of recognize that we're almost wired to see the negative on things. Think about it in the course of your day. There are probably 10 good things that happen in the course of a day, excuse me, and maybe one bad thing, one irritating thing. When you go home at night, what is it that you're likely to talk to your spouse about? Right? It's always the negative that somehow jumps out at us. And a lot of behavioral psychologists will say that we're wired that way, that our ancestors, out foraging in the fields, if there was one poisonous berry and 10 tasty berries, they better know which was the poisonous berry. And if they didn't know which was the poisonous berry, they didn't become our ancestors. But, we're not in the fields anymore, and we have a different kind of control over our lives. So, we should be able to know what the problems are, where the poisonous berries are, but we also need to be able to concentrate on the positive things, because in many ways now it's the positive that helps us move forward, because it's the positive that lets us see what we want, where we want to be, and what's good.
Janice, I'm thinking about that. As you're saying that, I'm thinking one of the things that I notice that the most in my life is when I go out to speak to a large group, and I get their feedback afterwards, and the one comment that I could get 100, that was great, I was inspired with all that, and one person said it was all right, and I'll focus on the it was all right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think women do this more than men, because I notice even my spouse, like he focuses, he says, well, this went well and this went well. And I would say, yeah, but this happened. And he'd say, yeah, but this and this and this. And he focuses on the good things like that of the like feedback or whatever the situation is.
Well, good for him. And, I think we can make ourselves do that. I spoke to one woman who runs a nonprofit, and a big nonprofit, and she has 3 children, I think under the age of 5. She has little twins and a baby, and, a very busy life. And she talked about how whenever she was driving home, she would go over in her head everything bad that had happened in the course of the day, all of the problems, all of the difficulties, and by the time she got home, she was even more stressed, and she would come in all anxious, and she realized she wasn't doing any good for anybody. So she decided to turn that 20-minute drive home into her drive of gratitude, and that she would only think about the positive things, and she would only think about somebody who said something nice to her, or somebody who had done something nice. And, again, it didn't mean that the problems disappeared. It didn't mean that the difficulties of the day went away, but she could deal with them when she could actually deal with them. She couldn't deal with them in the car. And instead, by taking those 20 minutes to be grateful, she got home much calmer, much happier, and was able to spend a much more lovely and loving evening with her children. And I thought that was just a wonderful example of how we can control our thoughts a little bit. We can make ourselves say, as you just said, yeah, all of those people said nice things to me, but that one person said something negative. Okay, granted, but let me focus on the other ones. And at first it requires a very conscious effort to do that. I think if you do it enough, it starts to become a habit.
I think you're right, and for me, I think that I've noticed that if I focus on that negative, it's like I'm sabotaging myself.
Right.
Especially when there's so many other good things that I could focus on that would boost my confidence.
Exactly. Yeah. It's what you think about. So absolutely.
So how you organized the book, Janice, was that you took, it seemed to me, one area of your life each month and focused on it. And the first one was your relationship with your spouse.
Right. I started in January. It was right after New Year's when I had decided to take on the project. And So I thought, what's more important than my husband and my marriage? And that's probably the place where I need to be more grateful. So I have a really nice husband. I have a terrific husband. But I've been married a long time. And I think that after we've been with somebody for a while, we kind of stop noticing them. And we're all much better at complaining than we are at complimenting. And, most of us know that our spouses could be just so much better if only they would listen to us.
Well, that's a given.
But I decided that I was going to spend a month realizing that actually he was pretty good the way he was, and I was going to appreciate him and thank him for that. And so I did. And I started out by just thanking him over the course of a weekend for really simple things that he does anyway, driving us home somewhere safely at night. And he said, I always drive. And I said, yeah, I know you always drive, but, it's dark and it's snowing, and I don't really like to drive. I certainly don't like to drive in the snow, so thank you for driving. So just little things like that. And in the course of the weekend, just the whole vibe between us started to change, so that by Sunday night he said to me, thank you for cooking after dinner. And I said, I always cook. But we were starting to recognize each other for the things that we appreciated. And that was the point that I started calling I called a couple of marriage counselors, actually one out in Illinois, to say, does this make any sense? Could this actually be happening? that my marriage seems so much better in just, a few days by our being appreciative of each other. And there are many marriage counselors now who actually use gratitude as part of their therapy, that no matter how difficult a time people are having with each other, they'll start the session by say thank you to each other about something that you did this week. Even if it's, you didn't kill me. I mean, there's got to be something that you can thank somebody for. And the therapist out in Illinois who I had called because he's written a great deal about this told me that I was absolutely right, and that there's a lot of research showing that the neural circuits in the brain that cause feelings of connectedness actually start to change when you express feelings of gratitude. And it makes sense. If we lift weights, then our muscles start to change. And if we start using certain circuits, if we start using those pathways, those are the ones that start to get stronger. And he recommends that if it's difficult to do it in person, if you forget to say thank you, send an email once a day to your spouse. Tell yourself every night you're going to send an email that's just to fill in the blank that says, one thing you did today I appreciated was. And it will start to change how you think about your spouse and how you think about your day. It was so dramatic for my husband and myself that at the end of that month, we decided we certainly weren't going to stop this just for the sake of the book. And so we continued it certainly for the year and well after. It's really made a remarkable change. And I so recommend to your listeners that I have lots of the details in the book, but it's really worth a try. It's amazing how you can change your relationship and make both of you happier.
I know. I got a kick out of the stories. I liked them a lot, and I identified the one. There was one story where your spouse he's a physician, and he had to leave to go take care of something, and it was an inopportune time. It was like late at night or something like that, which normally would have been a time that would have been uncomfortable for you. And I have a spouse who leaves for work. He's a muscle therapist, also works in the health field in that way. And he leaves at 5 o'clock in the morning. And you think, really? And
Yep.
I laughed when I read that part in your book.
Well, thank you. I liked that story also because it was very dramatic for me. My husband is a wonderful doctor, and he's an internist and one of those kind and caring doctors. And when a patient is sick, he'll often run into the hospital. And this was, after midnight one night, and he got a call, and he sort of snuck into the closet to change because he knows that I get upset if he's leaving late at night. And I lay there in bed thinking, okay, I've got to figure out, so this is month number one. I've got to figure out a reason to be grateful for this, not annoyed. And I I thought about it for a really long time, and I got up and I went over to the closet, and he, looked at me very anxiously, wondering what I was going to say. And I said, honey, I was just thinking how lucky that patient is. There's somebody lying scared and sick in an emergency room, and you're coming in to take care of her. And I'm thinking how wonderful she's going to feel when you get there, and how lucky I am that I'm going to get you when you come back home, that I'm married to you, and I get to go back in my bed and not be the one who's ill tonight. And so, thank you for being the wonderful doctor and wonderful person you are. And boy, he almost fell over when he heard that one. But, the funny thing about expressing gratitude is that it has a bigger effect on you than it does on the person who's hearing it. Because you know what? That's how I think of my husband now. And it never occurs to me anymore to be upset if he goes off or if he's late. I just think how lucky I am that I had married to this nice person. I think how lucky his patients are to have him. And it affects you when you say thank you to somebody. It changes how you feel. You feel better. You feel better about the other person, and you feel better about yourself. That's sort of the secret of gratitude. You're not you're saying thank you to somebody else, but you're really giving the gift to yourself.
And when you say that, Janice, it makes me think of you. I was really surprised you were talking about kids in the 18 to 24 age group who feel like they don't have to say thank you, because I think in one of the example used that somebody thought that the child should say thank you for sending them to camp, and he said, well, is that what parents are supposed to do?
Right. Kids are complicated, and at different age groups there are different issues. And that's right. Sometimes kids just, how do they have any sense of what's special or what parents are supposed to do versus what they should be thanked for? And I think telling a kid that he or she is ungrateful or that you should say thank you really isn't going to do anything. What you need to do is open their eyes to the rest of the world. They need to see you being grateful. They need to hear you being grateful to them and thanking them for the things that they do. That sets a wonderful example. And talk about gratitude. I always did this when my kids were younger. We tried to have family dinners most nights, and once a week, actually, on Friday nights, we would always be together, and I would start every dinner by saying, tell me something good that happened this week. I wasn't yet doing gratitude. Now I would change it to tell me something that you're grateful for this week. But it was just that sense of being positive, that sense of finding a reason to be grateful and focusing it that way and helping kids to think about things that way. I think that 18 to 24 age group that you mentioned, we did find in that survey was the most ungrateful group. And in part, it's because they want to be able to do things themselves. And so they feel a little bit guilty that they can't. And yeah, they're grateful that their parents are paying for college or getting them an apartment or doing whatever, but they also feel that guilt that they're not doing it themselves. And as one young woman said to me, the guilt outweighs the gratitude. So I think parents need to be sensitive to that and to realize that, not to necessarily ask their kids to thank them for things, but I think when kids realize that their parents are giving and truly are giving of themselves out of love and wanting to, the kids are going to recognize that and feel it and come around. And that's certainly what I've found with my children.
And I know that you also talk about the gratitude rituals, and you also talk about using gratitude to lose weight. So we have to go to a break, but when we come back, that's what I'd like to talk about with you.
Okay.
You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. We're with Janice Kaplan. We're talking about the Gratitude Diaries. And Janice, you talked to a sociologist who talked about gratitude rituals, and I thought they were really neat.
Well, there are all sorts of different rituals that you can do. Just as I was saying before, just talking to your kids before bed or at dinner time about what they're grateful for. I think it's really important that gratitude becomes something that's fun, that it doesn't become an obligation or a chore. I've suggested that if you don't want to keep a gratitude journal, or if writing things down seems too much like a problem, how about if the whole family picks a day of the week and everybody takes a picture on their, just pull out your cell phone in the course of, let's say every Tuesday is family photo day, and you take a picture of something that you're grateful for and you post it on Instagram or Facebook or wherever the whole family goes. It becomes a way of using social media in a positive way, and looking for the good things. And so I think anything that you can do that reminds you to reframe things, to look at things positively, again, if you do it enough, it becomes a nice habit.
And sometimes we don't like to write, or people don't like to. You and I write, we write, but not everybody likes that. But I've noticed even sometimes if I'm out for a walk and I take my phone, I just plug that, like I have that recorder on my phone, and I'll just say something into my phone, and then I can transcribe it later.
Right. And, instead of calling it a fancy gratitude journal, call it a scrap of paper next to your bed at night. And, all you have to do is write down 3 words. Tell yourself you're going to write down just one thing in the course of the day that made you grateful. And just doing that will change how you look at the whole day. So you'll wake up in the morning and you'll have a cup of coffee and you'll think, oh, maybe that's what I'm going to be grateful for today. Or it gets to be 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you haven't been grateful for anything yet. So, you decide to maybe stop for just a moment and look around and look out at a pretty sunset, or notice the sun glistening on the leaves. And just that little moment gives you something. And, you can, as I said, you can scribble it down on the piece of paper, or you can whip out your cell phone and snap the leaves shimmering in the sunshine as just a reminder to yourself that something good did happen that day.
Now, Janice, listen, the holidays are coming, and that's usually good for an extra 8 to 10 pounds. and you had a whole chapter on using gratitude and to lose weight.
I did. I figured if I'm writing the Gratitude Diaries and spending a year improving my life, you got to lose weight, right? That's part of it. And it struck me that so many religions have grace before meals. And what is grace except gratitude? It's a way of stopping and pausing and not just eating, but stopping and appreciating what's in front of you. So my book is secular. It's not religious in any way. And so I thought, well, how do we do this so that all of us can do this in the same way? And so I came up with a 5-point plan that you can read about in the Gratitude Diaries. But the basic idea of it is really to stop and appreciate what's in front of you, and to only eat food that you really want. And something as simple as telling yourself that you're going to look at something for 30 seconds before you actually put it in your mouth completely changes what you're willing to eat. Because if you look at something and you think, am I really grateful for that? Is that going to make me feel good? It may make you change what you want to eat. For me, I was started doing the Gratitude Diaries, the Gratitude Diet, during the summer. And, I love fresh fruit. So it was wonderful. Yes, I could look at a bowl of blueberries for 30 seconds and think, you bet I'm grateful for that. And now at this time of year when their apples are fresh and beautiful and just off the trees, I'm very grateful to bite into a crispy apple. But, you look at a bag of packaged crackers and you're probably going to, or cookies that, with a lot of hydrogenated stuff in them, and you're probably going to look at that and go, yeah, I'm not so grateful. Let me see what else I can find. And it was amusing to me how simple it was, and we all basically know what's good for us and what's not. We don't need magic diets anymore. We understand nutrition. We understand what's healthy. And it's really just a question of stopping and being with ourselves for that moment to make ourselves eat the right things and be a little bit healthier.
I personally liked it, and listeners, if you read it in the book, you'll really get it. It's what Janice said, but she really outlines her 5-step program. So it's really a very good process. I'm using it, Janet, and I'll let you know at the end of the holidays if I kept the extra 8 to 10 off.
I think you will. And, something else I talk about there is that by using the gratitude diet, you don't have to give up on everything. I sort of joke in the book about a bakery near my house that makes these fabulous chocolate cookies. And I'm sure they're very high calorie, but they truly make me happy. They make me grateful. And I decided, okay, then I can have one of those once in a while on the gratitude diet. Now I've had a friend who's a nutritionist who thinks I'm giving terrible advice that way. But I think the best diet is the one that works for you, and the best diet is the one where you really can appreciate what you're eating and can sort of bring food to a higher level rather than just something that you're sticking in your mouth, but really making it something that you can stop and appreciate.
You talk about a lot of your friends in the book, and I'm curious for you to tell the listeners, how did your friends respond to your newfound gratitude and love of life?
Well, I have one very close friend who's been a friend since childhood, who's a very successful woman and was so skeptical of my doing this, and just was really afraid that I was going to just end up so soft and sappy that she wouldn't be able to talk to me anymore. It was very important to me that not be the case. It was very important to me, as I said before, that gratitude not just be a pat on the back and a way of placating you and saying, oh, okay, everything is all right, because that's not what it is at all. And I think she was very happy to see, we're happy when we see our friends happy, and she saw how much happier I got in the course of the year, and sort of towards the end of the year, she decided to try it with her husband. They were away on a vacation, and she came back, and she was just stunned, and she said to me, oh my gosh, you were right. Why didn't we know that before? And I said, well, I did know it before. So I think at first people can be skeptical about whether gratitude is going to change them too much. And when they see the way I approached it, when they see that it's really, somebody gave me the quote that mine is the hard-headed woman's guide to gratitude, which I really liked, because none of us want to be soft-headed. And so when you think of gratitude as something that's really just there to make you happier and to make the good things in your life shine brighter, it's really hard not to want to be part of that.
And that's true, yes. But was there anybody who thought you were just too Pollyanna?
No, I'm not Pollyanna, and I think people know that. I tried not to proselytize too much, but I did talk about it a lot, and I think just about all of my friends are happy that they have started to add some of this into their lives, because it becomes something that you start to think about, and you go, oh yeah, and who at the end of the day goes, oh gosh, I was too grateful today? It's not. It's just, we all wake up in the morning and we want it to be a good day. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be grumpy and frustrated today. And so if we have a way to make ourselves happy in the course of that day, or a way to make ourselves think about things differently, I think we're, again, giving a great gift to ourselves. And by the way, there's also great research on the effects. We just talked about gratitude and diet, also the effects of gratitude on health, how gratitude helps you sleep better, it lowers stress, it improves your blood pressure, it has very dramatic effects on lowering depression, and some amazing research on that I talk about in the book. So I think it's just this one little thing that we can do that can have ramifications in so many different directions.
Yeah, I think, Janice, I think that this is a really excellent, you mentioned gift a couple of seconds ago, excellent gift for Christmas for somebody. I would say not necessarily for the person that you think needs it the most, because they probably will be offended that you think they need it. But, even though you know that they do. But I think it's great for a young person who's struggling to find themselves, or to people who are open to finding new and better ways to improve their health and well-being.
Well, thank you. And, I've been delighted when I've given talks and people have come up to buy the book afterwards. And it's a book that people seem to buy 4 copies of, because they do want to give it to, I think I'll give one to my sister and I'll give one to my friend and one to my mom. And, if you're going to somebody's house for Thanksgiving, it's the holiday of gratitude. What better way to say thank you than with the book called The Gratitude Diaries. So I think helping people bring gratitude into their lives and giving the gift of gratitude is really something that I'm happy to be able to help people do.
Well, I'm glad that I have it. I'm glad that I read it, and I am so grateful that you came today. Thank you so much for coming to Happy Hour.
Thank you. Fun to talk to you.
Thank you. And to my victorious listeners, I try to practice gratitude. Actually, try isn't a good word, but I make an effort, and I think that I'm suggesting that you give it a shot, at least over the weekend. I'm challenging you. This is what I want to do. I want to challenge you to list 10 things, 5 on Saturday and 5 on Sunday, that you're grateful for, or either that or say thank you to 5 people and see what happens. And let me know. You can find me on Facebook at Victorious Woman Project, on Twitter at Annmarie Kelly. You can check out the Victorious Woman website, and you'll find the radio wrap-up at the Victory blog. I'm heading to Scotland, Pennsylvania, and for Joseph's homecoming, and I would like to remind you, it's still writing season, or as I call it, party time for the deer. So be careful because they're every place. Joseph and I have been so surprised to see they're in median strips and they're every place. So be very careful. I love that you come to Happy Hour, and my quote today comes from the Codependent No More author, Melanie Beatty, who said, "Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend." Have a grateful and victorious weekend. Chendan.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.